My name is Bridget Johnson. I'm 35 years old and work as a freelance accountant. For years, I've been the one quietly holding my family together, paying off their credit card debts, covering their mortgage, and even buying them furniture they could never afford on their own. I thought that was what love meant: sacrifice, support, and showing up when no one else would. But nothing could have prepared me for the message that would shatter everything I believed about family. The snow was falling softly over Spokane that December evening, but inside my apartment, my world felt anything but calm. My phone pinged with a new email from my mom. The subject line read, "Christmas plans." I smiled, expecting the usual invite to our annual family gathering: warm lights, familiar laughter, and, maybe for once, a real thank you for everything I'd done. But when I opened it, the words felt like a slap across the face. "This place isn't for losers, Bridget. You're not invited this year." I stared at the screen, reading it again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the message was cold and deliberate, written like a business memo. "We're keeping it small. Just those who've made something of themselves." It continued. My heart sank. I called my mom immediately, hands shaking. "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked. Her voice was flat, detached. "It's what we decided, honey. The guest list is final." There was no warmth, no remorse, just a closed door where love used to be. I sat frozen for a long time, staring into space. For years, I had covered their bills, their home, their credit cards, even their expensive new furniture, and this was how they repaid me. I opened my banking app and scrolled through transactions, thousands of dollars spent on them without so much as a thank you. My chest tightened with betrayal, but somewhere inside me, something else began to stir, a spark of defiance. If they thought I was a loser, fine. I would show them what losing really meant. And this time, they wouldn't see it coming. Before we continue the story, leave a comment telling me what time it is and which city you're watching from. I truly want to know how far this story has reached. The next morning, I sat at my desk, the email still open on my laptop. My coffee had gone cold, but I wasn't ready to let this go. I needed answers. Why would my own parents cut me out of Christmas? I opened my messaging app and fired off a text to my older sister, Monica, the one person who might not dodge the question. Why am I not invited to Christmas? What's going on? I typed, my fingers tense. Monica's reply came fast, but it wasn't what I expected. "Mom and Dad want to impress their business partners," she wrote. "They're only inviting people who've made it to show off at the party. You know how they are about appearances." I stared at the words, my jaw tightening. Business partners. So I was being sidelined to make their guest list look more prestigious. Monica added, "It's not personal, Bridget. They just want a certain vibe." Not personal. It felt like a knife twist. I opened my banking app, needing to ground myself in facts. My account history was a parade of sacrifices: $1, $200 for their mortgage last month, $800 for their credit card debt, $500 for utilities. Month after month, I'd covered their expenses without a second thought. I scrolled further, my eyes catching on a transfer I'd almost forgotten: $10,000 to their furniture store 2 years ago, a loan to keep it afloat. No repayment, no gratitude, just silence. My stomach churned. They'd been bleeding me dry while planning to parade their successful friends at Christmas. I dug deeper, pulling up statements from the store's account I'd helped set up. The numbers were grim: lavish expenses for custom signage, catered client events, and a new company car they didn't need. All funded by me, their supposed loser daughter. Monica's text buzzed again. "They're just trying to keep up with the big shots, you know," she wrote, almost apologetic. Keep up. They were living a fantasy on my dime. The realization hit hard. I wasn't just uninvited. I was invisible to them. My role had been reduced to a walking ATM, propping up their ego-driven charade. I grabbed a notepad and started listing every recurring payment tied to them: mortgage, credit cards, utilities, insurance. Each entry fueled my anger, but also my clarity. I'd been their safety net for too long, and they'd taken it for granted. Monica's next message popped up hedging. Maybe talk to them? They didn't mean it like that. I didn't respond. Talking wouldn't change the truth staring me in the face. I circled the store's investment in red ink. That $10,000 was my leverage, the one thing they couldn't ignore. I wasn't just going to sit back and take this. They wanted a Christmas without me. Fine. I'd make sure they felt the weight of their own choices. I jotted down the bank's contact info, my mind already racing to the next step. How could I have been so blind to their game? And what would you do if your family treated you like this? Keep giving or pull the plug. By noon, my fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to change everything. I'd had enough of being my family's doormat. I logged into my bank's online portal, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and resolve. One by one, I canceled every recurring payment tied to my parents, their mortgage, credit cards, utility bills, even their insurance. Each click felt like cutting a chain. The confirmation emails pinged in final and unapologetic. I wasn't just stopping the money, I was reclaiming my life. Next, I called my financial advisor. I want to pull my investment from my parents' furniture store. I said, my voice steady. The $10,000 I'd sunk into their business 2 years ago was still listed as an active stake. I knew withdrawing it would hit my dad, George, and my mom, Cynthia, hard. Their store was their pride, their shiny facade for Spokane's elite. It's done, the advisor confirmed. The funds will be back in your account by tomorrow. I exhaled, picturing their faces when they got the news. Shock. Panic. Good. I grabbed my phone and dialed Monica. I'm done. I told her, my tone cold. No more payments for Mom and Dad, no more bailing out their store. I'm out. Monica's voice cracked on the other end. Bridget, you can't do this. What about their reputation, the business partners they're hosting? I cut her off. Their reputation isn't my problem anymore. They chose this when they called me a loser. She stammered, throwing out excuses, family, legacy, community standing, but I wasn't budging. You're with them, or you're not, I said, and hung up. I needed air, someone to talk to who wouldn't defend them. I texted Wendy, my friend since college, and we met at a cozy Spokane cafe, the kind with mismatched mugs and too many plants. Over a latte, I spilled everything, how I'd been bankrolling their lavish lifestyle, how they'd erased me from Christmas to impress their fancy friends. My voice shook, not with sadness, but with fury. They've been using me, Wendy, and I let them. Wendy leaned forward, her eyes sharp. What they're doing is blatant manipulation, Bridget. They're banking on your guilt to keep you hooked. Don't let them. Her words hit like a lifeline. You're not their ATM, she said. You're allowed to say no. I nodded, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. She was right. I'd been carrying their burdens for too long. Walking out of that cafe, I felt lighter, like I'd finally drawn a line in the sand. Back home, I stared at my laptop, the bank confirmation still open. I'd burned bridges today, and it felt right. My parents wanted a Christmas without me. They'd get it, and everything that came with it. Monica's pleas echoed in my head, but I pushed them aside. This wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. Christmas Eve arrived, my apartment glowing with a single candle's light. I sat on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, staring at the small tree I'd put up for myself. No family, no chaos, just silence. It felt freeing, yet a hollow ache lingered. I'd cut the financial cords tying me to my parents, and while the weight of their betrayal was lifting, the absence of holiday warmth stung. I wasn't celebrating their way, but I was still alone. Across town, George and Cynthia were likely setting up their lavish Christmas party, oblivious to the storm coming. I'd canceled their mortgage payments, credit card support, and car insurance, and pulled my $10,000 investment from their furniture store. They must have received the bank's notifications by now, emails and letters piling up, warning of overdue balances. I imagined George's face red with frustration as he realized his carefully curated guest list wouldn't save him from the fallout. Their plan to dazzle Spokane's business elite was unraveling, and I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. By 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," she wrote. Two debt collectors showed up at the house, right in front of their fancy guests. I could picture it, Cynthia's forced smile cracking as men in cheap suits demanded payment at their doorstep, their voices carrying over the holiday music. The business partners they'd bragged to local realtors, a car dealer probably stood there, wine glasses in hand, witnessing the humiliation. Monica's text continued. "It's a mess, Bridget. They're blaming you." Then came a message from my mom. "How could you do this to us on Christmas?" it read. "We're your family. You're tearing us apart." Her words dripped with guilt, each one designed to pull me back into their orbit. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to fire back to list every dollar I'd poured into their lives. But I typed instead, "You made your choice. You don't get to call me a loser and expect me to keep paying." I hit send, my hands steady. I opened my laptop and scrolled through social media, curious about their so-called perfect party. Monica had posted a photo, a glittering tree, a table laden with appetizers, her smile wide but strained. The caption read, "Merry Christmas from the Johnsons family and friends together at last." I snorted. Family. They'd excluded me to impress strangers. The photo screamed desperation, a facade to cover the chaos unfolding behind their doors. I could almost hear Cynthia's voice rallying her guests to ignore the collector's interruption, pretending everything was fine. I leaned back, sipping my wine. The candle flickered, casting shadows on my walls. I'd spent years propping up their lies, but no more. George and Cynthia had built their castle on my money, and now it was crumbling. They'd face the consequences, not me. 2 days after Christmas, I stepped into a Spokane restaurant to face my parents. The air was thick with tension the moment I walked in. My dad sat rigid at a corner table, his jaw set, while my mom fidgeted with her napkin, her eyes already narrowing at me. I slid into the chair across from them, my pulse steady but my resolve ironclad. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a reckoning. George didn't waste time. "You're selfish, Bridget." He spat, his voice low but sharp. "You ruined our Christmas, our reputation, everything we've built. Those debt collectors showing up. That was your doing." His words stung, but I'd expected them. He leaned forward, his face red. "Do you know how humiliated we were in front of our business partners?" I met his gaze, unflinching. He thought he could shame me into backing down, but I was done playing their game. I pulled out my phone, opening a spreadsheet I'd prepared. "Let's talk about what I've done for you." I said, my voice calm but cutting. "For years, I paid your $1,200 mortgage every month. I cleared $800 in credit card debt month after month. I covered $500 for utilities, $300 for your car insurance, and that $10,000 I invested in your furniture store. You never even said thank you." George's mouth opened, but no words came out. Cynthia's eyes darted away, her hands twisting the napkin tighter. Then Cynthia started crying right on cue. "Bridget, how could you betray your family like this?" she said, her voice trembling. "You're hurting Monica, tearing us apart. We're your parents, we raised you." Her tears were a performance, one I'd seen too many times. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "You need to fix this," she pleaded. "For Monica's sake, for our legacy." I almost laughed. Legacy? They'd built nothing but a house of cards on my money. "I'm not responsible for your lifestyle anymore," I said, standing up. "You called me a loser, excluded me from Christmas to impress strangers. You don't get to demand my help now." George slammed his fist on the table, drawing stares from nearby diners. "You'll regret this," he growled. I shook my head. "No, Dad. You will." I turned and walked out, the restaurant's chatter fading behind me. For the first time, I felt free, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Wendy. "How'd the meeting with your parents go?" she asked. I stared at the message, the adrenaline from the confrontation still coursing through me. "It's done," I replied, keeping it short. I wasn't ready to unpack it, not yet. I sat back staring at the ceiling of my apartment. George and Cynthia had tried to pull me back into their web, but I'd cut the strings. They'd have to face reality without me. A week into January, my phone buzzed with alerts from a family Facebook group. I opened the app expecting mundane updates, but instead found a post from George and Cynthia. "Our daughter abandoned us out of jealousy," it read, their words dripping with venom. "She cut us off to sabotage our success." My stomach twisted. They'd turned the narrative against me, painting me as the villain to anyone who'd listen. The post had dozens of likes, mostly from distant relatives who didn't know the full story. By midday, my phone rang relentlessly. A cousin called first, her tone sharp. "Bridget, how could you ditch your parents like that?" she asked, parroting their story. Then an aunt chimed in, her voice heavy with judgment. "Family doesn't do this. What's gotten into you?" I tried explaining years of paying their bills, the $10,000 I'd sunk into their store, but they weren't listening. They'd swallowed George and Cynthia's lies whole, leaving me feeling like an outcast in my own family. Each call chipped away at me, but I refused to break. Curious, I dug into their financial mess, contacting a friend who worked at a local bank. She confirmed my worst suspicions. George and Cynthia had taken out new loans from their business partners, risky high-interest deals to keep their furniture store afloat after I pulled my investment. The store was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, their lavish facade crumbling faster than I'd expected. I shook my head, almost pitying them. They'd gambled their future to save face, and now they were drowning. Scrolling through social media, I spotted another post from Monica. A glossy photo of the store's showroom captioned, "The Johnson legacy shines on, visit us for exclusive deals." It was pathetic. The polished image couldn't hide the truth. Creditors were circling, and Monica's post was a desperate attempt to keep up appearances. I saw through it the same way I'd seen through her Christmas photo. Their whole world was a performance, and I was done being part of the script. I texted Wendy, needing a break from the family drama. Thinking of starting my own accounting firm, I wrote, testing the idea. Something small, just for me. Her reply was instant. "That's the spirit, Bridget. You've got the skills, go for it." We bounced ideas back and forth, marketing plans, client outreach, a website. It felt good to focus on my own future, not theirs. Wendy didn't mention my parents, and I was grateful. Their mess wasn't my burden anymore. I stared at the Facebook post again, tempted to fire back to expose every dollar I'd spent on them, every lie they'd told. But I stopped myself. Responding would only pull me back into their toxic cycle, giving them the attention they craved. Instead, I muted the group chat and set my phone down. George, Cynthia, and Monica could spin their stories, but I was done playing defense. My energy was better spent building something for myself, away from their chaos. By mid-January, Spokane's icy winds carried whispers of my parents' downfall. The news hit like a cold snap. The bank had seized George and Cynthia's furniture store. Unpaid loans piled high from their desperate deals with business partners had finally tipped the scales. The showroom, once their pride, was now padlocked, its windows dark. I heard about it through a local news alert, not from them. The headline stung, but I felt no urge to swoop in and save them. George and Cynthia's next move was no surprise. They'd sold their sleek company car, a shiny SUV they'd flaunted to impress clients, to scrape together enough to pay off a fraction of their debts. But it wasn't enough. My bank contact told me creditors were still hounding them, sending letters and making calls demanding the rest. I pictured George, his face etched with panic, and Cynthia scrambling to keep up appearances. Their empire of ego was collapsing, and they had no one left to prop it up. Then came an email from my mom, her name lighting up my inbox like a warning. "Bridget, we're sorry for how things turned out," she wrote, her tone softer than I'd ever heard. "But our family's reputation is at stake. Please help us one last time." The words were a calculated mix of apology and guilt, a final plea to pull me back into their mess. I read it twice, my jaw tight. They weren't sorry for what they'd done to me, just for the consequences they now faced. I typed a reply, my fingers steady. You spent years living beyond your means, and I paid for it, I wrote. You don't get to ask for more. Take responsibility. I hit send, feeling a clarity I hadn't known before. Cynthia's email was just another attempt to manipulate me, but I was no longer their safety net. They'd built their life on reckless spending, and now they'd face the fallout without my help. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Monica. I was wrong. Not to stand up for you. She wrote her words, hesitant. I should have said something sooner. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to believe her, but Monica had stood by while George and Cynthia vilified me. Her apology felt like too little too late. Thanks for saying that, I replied, keeping it brief. But I need space. I wasn't ready to let her back in, not after everything. Later that week, Wendy called, her voice bright. There's a community networking event this weekend, she said. Local entrepreneurs, small business owners, perfect for your accounting firm idea, Bridget. You in? I smiled for the first time in days. Count me in, I told her. The event was a chance to connect, to build something of my own. Standing among strangers who didn't know my family's drama, I felt a spark of possibility. My future wasn't tied to their mistakes. It was mine to shape. 6 months later, my Spokane apartment felt like home, not a battleground. I'd blocked my parents' numbers and muted their emails, severing the last threads of contact with George and Cynthia. My days were now filled with work, building my small accounting firm from the ground up, and evenings spent rediscovering myself. I painted my walls a soft blue, hung photos of places I wanted to visit, and let the quiet settle in. Their drama no longer had a place in my life. Word reached me through a mutual acquaintance that George and Cynthia had sold their sprawling house, the one I'd helped pay for all those years. They'd downsized to a cramped apartment on the edge of town, a far cry from the polished image they'd clung to. No more lavish parties, no more pretending to be Spokane's elite. Their fall was complete, stripped of the grandeur they'd built on my money. I didn't gloat, but I didn't mourn either. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. Monica, I learned, had taken a part-time job at a local bookstore, trying to stand on her own for the first time. She'd sent me a few texts over the months, brief updates about her life, but I kept my responses short. Glad you're doing okay, I'd write, and leave it at that. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Monica had chosen to side with our parents for too long, and while I didn't wish her ill, I wasn't ready to rebuild that bridge. Maybe one day, but not now. Wendy and I teamed up for a community project, organizing a financial literacy workshop for local teens. You're a natural at this, Bridget, she said one afternoon as we sorted flyers at a downtown library. The work was rewarding, connecting with kids who wanted to learn, sharing tips I wished I'd known sooner. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about empowering them to take control. Being around Wendy and others who valued me for me, not for what I could give, felt like a gift. These were the relationships I wanted, ones built on respect, not obligation. Late at night, I'd sit by my window watching Spokane's lights flicker. I thought about what family meant. For years, I'd believed it required sacrifice, pouring myself into their needs at the cost of my own. But I'd learned the hard truth. Family doesn't mean letting others drain you. Sometimes walking away is the only way to make them face their own responsibilities. I wasn't heartless for choosing myself, I was whole. Thank you for sticking with me through this story. What would you do in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear them.